welcome. My first official interview, and glad to have my good friend here, Stephen Fogg. Welcome, Stephen. And
hey, good to be here, John.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Funny little anecdote on this little interview. We actually recorded this last week, but the webcast person, that's me, failed to check one little setting, and that is make sure we were recording on a piece of software called Ecamm, and I didn't see my audio was muted on me, so Stephen was talking and we captured him. So I appreciate Stephen taking the time. He's super busy to reschedule and do this interview a second round two and do this. So welcome, Stephen. I'm so pleased to have you here with us, and thank you for joining with us. I know it's early morning your time in Australia. Maybe let's just take a couple of minutes to let you introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks. Well, thanks for having me back on. It's great to be back. And, if for everyone watching, John's sipping a very long coffee there. And the poor guy's been setting stuff up like crazy. And we all know that technology happens, right? Stuff happens. And it's just, delighted to come back. A little bit about me. So I was born in the UK and now live here in Melbourne, Australia. I've served on my church staff for 10 years as a communications director. In the last 2 years, I was the church online pastor. Started out church online presence about 5 years ago. Grew that to about 2,500. Then the Lord took us to the UK for a year, where I served as an exec pastor for a year. Came back, and now I'm kind of back in the digital marketing space. And kind of when COVID hit, I started an online summit for church online, and thinking it would just be a couple of hundred churches maybe that would get together, and that grew very quickly in 3 weeks to 4,500 churches coming on, and so that was amazing. And
it was actually.
Yes,
it was amazing. That was a lot of work.
Yeah, it was a lot of work, and like all things, you don't really know what you're getting yourself into until you're actually in it.
Yeah.
But hopefully the blessing was on the broader church body around the world, and we had some wonderful people like you, John, and who just gave their time and their energy to serve the Capital C Church, and that was really the hope and desire, really, for that summit. And I think we ended up around 30 speakers, all experienced in the church online space. So that was a real blessing, I think, for lots of churches. And, since we last spoke, John, I was talking with a pastor in a place called Mildura, which is about 5.5 hours drive north of where I am. And it was a conversation about something totally separate. And at the end of the call, he goes, "Are you the Steve Fogg that put on the Church Online Summit?" And I just went, yeah, fantastic. And he just said it was such a blessing for his church. And it's just that sort of feedback that fuels me to know that, in that space that helped churches. In this space, I know hopefully this conversation will help a pastor or a leader do something in the digital space just that little bit better. So that's kind of my heart for the broader church. I think we mentioned last time, it's going to be so exciting when we get to heaven to say, okay, what happened? Yeah. What happened out of all of this? It's going to be so cool.
Absolutely. No, I think it was a tremendous honor to participate in the online summit. You did a fantastic job, as well as all the other speakers. There's no doubt that there was a lot of quick pivoting of sorts for everybody to try to get their content, get it produced, captured to send to you. But I totally agree with you. I think that the opportunity was really to help others, excuse me, in the Capital C Church space, and try to help facilitate a conversation and support mechanism that they could start getting some information to help them develop their online digital strategy. And I think that's been one of the transitions that we know with the pandemic, and this continues on with the social distancing aspects and the things that you're dealing with at a local level in your area, as well as what we do here in the States, in California. where we have to develop a new type of approach to how we are able to deliver what we were doing in a physical realm now in a digital format, which was there previously, but now obviously the exposure and the focus and attention to it is much, much larger. And you obviously deal quite a bit of that from a digital marketing capacity, as well as other areas of helping support churches in what you're doing to kind of walk them through that process. Do you see that as kind of we kind of went to the online summit, we kind of saw this quick gravitation to, okay, we got to do something. Do you see this as another phase, another stage that we're going into?
Yeah, look, absolutely. Look, there is no doubt with the pandemic, it's changing the model of church services, at least, and how that's delivered. And, the typical church service, and again, not to be too cliched, but it's a welcome, it's a couple of songs, it's notices, it might be another song, or it might go straight into a preach, and then there'll be some sort of a response song, and that's generally a service. And then someone maybe comes and wraps up the service, and then you're dismissed in the physical realm. Well, in the digital realm, obviously that service planning at least has changed. And I think, a lot of churches kind of just went online and tried to repeat what was the normal service online, and realized that it was fine at the start of COVID-19, but then they realized everyone's getting a bit of screen fatigue, and they needed a bit more engagement. So the metric isn't just about attendance, it's about how do you engage people online. So that's tweaked and changed how people plan their services and deliver their services. But more broadly, the place of meeting of church, certainly for this next little year and a bit, is different. And I'm seeing churches already, in terms of the horizon view, move to, just by default, a distributed model, so like a house church model. And depending on what stage of lockdown you're in, some are meeting together and watching the service together, like in small groups, or it's where we're back at now. We're in lockdown 2.0 here in Melbourne, and we can't even meet together. So we're just watching separately. Right. So that distributed model is going to be here, and I think there's some plus sides to that. And there's some downsides to that as well, but that's the reality of the place at where we're at now. But the interesting thing for me is, what do we do with these big church buildings that we've got, and this expensive real estate that we've got? And I think we will see a shift in that. I was talking with a church last week where they've closed one of their multi-site campuses because everyone's online. Right. So their lease was coming up, and they decided not to renew their lease. But people were meeting in homes anyway, so they just said, well, let's just keep meeting in homes. So they've just vicariously gone into that model, and they're now going, we're in that model. Let's work with that model. So I think, that's the shift I'm seeing. The digital part is obviously just a delivery of that service on one level, but also there's that wonderful opportunity that we have with everything being online, is that we could reach people like we've never reached them before. And it's not necessarily inviting someone to a physical service, it's helping people lurk online and watch a service. So that's the great opportunity, just on a service point of view, that I'm seeing. And I experienced that when we started our church online 5 years ago. People were coming and lurking and watching. And, you can check things out online that you can't do when you've been invited in real life. So there's some big shifts that are going on multiple different levels. But I actually think it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity on so many levels. I think the big opportunity is for the church to be the church and to serve the community and to love the community. And I'm seeing that play out in different ways. I think those churches that embrace that will be the ones that endure. If your church is just a come to see us at the weekend type of church, you've got to pivot. And I don't mean just from a relevancy point of view, but the reality is that's what God commanded us to do, to be the church and to go to serve the poor and feed the hungry.
Yes.
And that compassion element in this season of where a lot of people are doing it really tough is actually just as strong a gospel witness as people putting the service online. So yeah, I'm seeing all these kinds of shifts in the landscape.
No, it's and I think you're absolutely right, and I think that is the mission of the church is not simply just a meeting, but serving, right? And I think that's an opportunity we have in the midst of the chaos of this crisis. The Lord is giving us an opportunity to serve, to love, serve in our communities, help reach those in need, really, demonstrate the character of the Lord and ministering and loving and sharing the good news of the gospel that we hold dear to ourselves, to be able to provide that hope in the midst of what is a very troubling time across the board in terms of just the fear and anxiety people experience. And so, no, absolutely. And I appreciate your perspective on just giving that insight, because I think that's helpful, just in terms of what I'm seeing in terms of just different ministries and churches and organizations that are trying to still develop kind of a tuning of sorts of their digital online strategy from a video or live streaming perspective. And I think you come at it from another perspective and angle to help kind of provide some more insight. Do you, is there a way that, people could get in touch with you to maybe learn a little bit more about what, where you might be able to help them, if they're kind of in this position and they're trying to search for, finding a landing spot of sorts? Is there a way they could reach you?
Yeah. Just Google my name, Stephen Fogg, and it's either a lawyer's going to show up or me. And that's pretty much what you find when you search my name. But just stevefogg.com is my blog. And I just share communication tips and digital marketing tips for those who are in Christian ministry or in the church. And, my passion, John, is just to, again, that's kind of what I've been doing for the last 10 years. And I feel like an old man in that space now. But and
that's okay. I'm going to be an old man in about a month. So I'm turning 50 in a month. So I feel like I'm going to be old.
Okay. Yeah, well, I feel old in terms of content when I go back to my archives. Right. I remember blogging, and I was on an old blog platform and moved to a WordPress blog platform, but that, and I just see that kind of change through the years. And the exciting part for me isn't necessarily obviously the blogging platform, just to resource the church. So I just share kind of what I'm seeing on that platform. And when I get the time to do it, my focus this year is really to help churches reach people. And there are just some significant opportunities for churches to reach people. So I've actually blogged less and actually done more. So if you go to my blog right now, and as we're recording this, I think my last post is in April, just before the summit.
Yep.
And I've been too busy doing so. I think if I looked at my stats the other day, and it's something like 120,000 visitors that I've been able to help take a step towards a church since April.
Wow.
And that's really cool.
Yeah, that's
my heart.
That's a lot. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and you. When we worked in the summit, that comes through, right? I mean, no doubt you were very helpful in taking on that task, and coordinating and facilitating that process alone is a pretty big effort. If anybody's ever done an event, even just a physical event, right? It takes weeks, months, sometimes of planning, right? You were able to pull that together, and with the generosity of others, and including their content and what we were able to do in a small way. I think it was a step forward to really kind of help reach, and that's my heart too. The same with Steve here, is to help support the venue of sorts of what we can do to kind of help contribute back, and help be a support to the local pastors or the ministries or an organization or whatever the need might be. So, but Steve, you did that's a huge thing, and I think you're right. I think from the technology perspective is we are generally inundated with a lot of information today. So for somebody to go peruse blogs and things like that, I may do my research, but I think we are seeing different ways we can communicate, and obviously vlogging, or like what we're doing here, we're doing an interview, and just taking 10, 15 minutes or whatever it may be, that time to be able to have a dialogue and discussion, and be able to kind of provide a resource for people, just kind of like, okay, well, I can take 15 minutes and watch a video and listen to it in the background and write down some notes. And I've seen a lot of value from that versus, somebody going to a website and trying to peruse and find the information and try to dig into, okay, well, now I got to follow up, I got to send an email, I got to do this, right? So, it's kind of like since we're such a visually generated, focused generation now, I think that there's an opportunity for us to look at different ways of how we use the tools that we've had available to us to help communicate.
Completely. Look, you're completely right. But I learn in different ways to the way you learn, and
right.
You've got to hit it from all sides. And what I love about blogging, it's just something I can do at any time. Literally all I need is my kind of hack writing skills to be able to create it and publish and. So that's really all I need. I don't have your technical genius of beautiful lights, cameras, lenses, in-ears. You compare folks, John's in-ears to my little Apple. He's got beautiful in-ear pieces, probably custom molded to his ears. Whereas I'm just like the hack.
Yeah,
so,
I know. I tend. Well, us tech guys, we tend to want to focus like, hey, let's just go out and see what we can do, right, and try to pull something together.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
But there's a certain transparency what you bring up in terms of the reality of having a simple approach. So that simplicity that you're describing is very useful and sometimes very well accepted in terms of the lights and other pieces that we do here. And I think there's a certain level of in the communication style that we have nowadays is that people appreciate that. It doesn't have to be, top notch, but, so absolutely, I totally agree with you.
No. So John, for me, the important things are sound, and that you can be seen.
Yep.
And really, those are the two essential elements. Everything else is just levels of incremental performance. So the Church Online Summit, for example, literally I was using lamps as my background to try and light the background just on the floor. I mean, that's how hacky I was. It was like, I've got to create the studio. I don't want to go out and buy stuff.
Right.
I bought a ring light just to help with my face, but a simple podcasting microphone to help with half decent audio. But
right.
it's really just a very basic attempt. And for those who are serving in churches, really it's about the audio and that people can see your face.
Yep.
And it might be that you want to stand up rather than sit down.
Yep.
When you preach, but it doesn't have to be complicated.
Right.
We don't have to, if a lot of churches, when they pivoted, were trying to reproduce exactly what they were doing on Sunday and in a worship and everything. It's like, well, hold on a second. The complexity of mixing just sound to an online is it's completely different to mixing for a room. So, don't try and do that. Strip it all back. Do an acoustic set, and I think, I saw a lot of that and, helped churches just simplify everything. And, we don't need, when we're starting out, absolutely sophisticated to the nth degree. Mm-hmm. It's the message which is the important part. Mm-hmm. As long as you can hear me, as long as you can see me, we can work on the rest. Yep. And for you, pastor listening, really that's our baseline. And start from there. Well done for pivoting, for all of those who pivoted this year.
Absolutely.
And John's, just a legend in terms of the technical side and can help you in that technical side where I'm Googling best microphones, like that's how basic I am. So, whereas John's probably got a list, and can just line the whole thing up. So that's really, I think there's a starting point for a lot of churches, and a lot of churches are still there.
Yeah.
And you might move to those sort of gel lights that, whereas I was literally down here, I was pointing lamps and testing it up against the wall to see what it would look like, and then coming back to the camera, and that was it. That's as hack as it got. But hey, 4,500 churches attended, and the message hopefully helped and equipped lots of churches. And that's where I look at that minimum viable product for church services. There's a lot that churches can do. All they need to do is step into it and do it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Steve. I think this has been a fantastic conversation. Thank you so much for your time and efforts and everything you've done. And everyone, I'll include some information when we post this interview, a link to Steve's website, and we'll make sure to give you some additional information. Thank you again, Steve. I'll be praying for you.
Thanks,
I know
John.
you guys are kind of going through your own process there. And as I said in the online summit, we're all... I don't like to say that we're all in this together, because everybody keeps saying that. But I think what I will say is this: we're standing shoulder to shoulder, and as the church to minister, and that's our goal, is to minister and love one another and encourage one another in the midst of the season that we're in today. So thank you, everyone, for joining us. We look forward to hearing your feedback. If you have any questions for Steve, I'll be happy to forward it on to Steve, or any questions for me, let me know. Thank you. Have a great day.